Hi, everybody. I am Samantha Siffring, and I am the business coach at tbhcoach.com. And today I am really excited to interview Jess Critchlow. She is the top dog at Light Up Work, where she helps online entrepreneurs transform into super confident and competent bosses so they can finally build their dream team and grow their business. And when she's not with her fellow bosses, talking all things people and teams, you can find her chasing after her crazy kiddo, Ray, or sampling the latest craft beer with her husband, Ollie, at their home in Windsor, Canada. You can find her over at lightupwork.com. And if you have any questions while you're watching this, feel free to type those in and I will ask her live. But first, I would love to just welcome you, Jess. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've seen a few of these in your group and I think they're great. So it's such an honor to be here. I love it.
Thanks. So let's just dive right in. I'm
Sure.
really curious when and why you started your business.
All right. So there's kind of two answers. One is an a more professional way of saying I don't know. And then the other one is probably a more useful answer. So the first one is I've always kind of had something on the side. Like I've always worked in corporate. I worked in big corporate in different kind of HR training, organizational development, management type roles. And I don't know if it's because I'm a control freak or or what it is. I've just always wanted my own thing on the side. So I've always had
Mhm.
some version of something. Um, the latest version, I should say, of Light Up Work, which is where I work, as you said in my intro, with bosses. That started about 2.5 years ago now. I was working with this really great company over in England. Actually, I've just moved back to Canada not that long ago, and it was a small sort of tech company. And one of the suppliers there, partners, really great CEO. They're just a small company, and so they don't have any sort of professional HR or organizational development. And he ran a few questions by me that he just was mulling over in his head. I gave him some kind of coaching, consulting, and he said to me, do you do any of this freelance? Like, do you do any consulting on the side?" And it was like a light bulb. I went, "Oh, this is what I should be doing on the side because this is what I love. How did I not come up with this?" So that's sort of where this latest version of my entrepreneurship has come from. And yeah, why I didn't think to do it before, I don't know, because it's what my expertise is in, it's what my background is in, and I really do love it. It's a lot of fun, actually.
That's so great. I would love to hear more about specifically what you're doing.
Yeah. So it depends on the company. So I have a few, like right now, it's still a part time consultancy that I run. So my kiddo, as you mentioned, she's only 11 months old. So I'm kind of half tailing off my maternity leave and half tailing,
Mhm.
building up my business. But depends on the organization. But really, in general, like across all my clients, what I do is I am sort of the leader's right hand person. Um, what I found with digital entrepreneurs especially, but really bosses in general, is as much as it's easy to rag on bosses and say like, "Oh, can you believe my boss did this?" or like we give management and leadership a really hard time. It's actually a really really hard job, and it's usually thankless because you're the boss. It's up to you. You're not allowed to you're not allowed to, I say in air quotes, mess it up or any of those things. And it's lonely. So what I do is I say coaching consulting. I, from a practical perspective, it's usually calls. So I'll have kind of every other week calls with the bosses I work with. We go through all of their people stuff they have going on. So, I've had someone quit and I don't know why. What do I do?
Mhm.
I have someone, their performance, they're just not performing. I know they can. I've seen them do good work before, and now I'm getting nothing out of them. So we sort of plan of attack of how they're going to approach those things. That's sort of one piece of it. And then the other piece is project work. So, for example, a company who they wanted to start doing performance reviews for the first time, but they didn't want a boring corporate thing. And so I designed, this is what an example could look like for you guys with your culture and your sort of leadership approach, and sent them some, like a process and a document they could use, that kind of thing. So that's sort of the two sides. It's the coaching, consulting, and then a little bit of project stuff in there. Does that, I don't know if that's practical enough, but I could give examples.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably get into tips in a little bit too.
Cool.
Tell me a bit more about where you are now in your business. I know you mentioned kind of on the tail end of a maternity leave.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you now?
Yeah. So as I was saying to you before we went live, today it looks like working out of my parents' office, but I think it's a supply closet, while my mom and my kiddo are running outside together. Basically, it's very, so I took 6 weeks off actually when I had my baby, and I was one of those naive first time moms. I was like, maternity leave's gonna be so boring. I'll just like write blog posts every day, and I'll like do all the all the other mums out there are probably laughing at me. I've learned my lesson the hard way. That's not how it works.
We all have to learn the hard way.
Right? Yeah. So I took 6 weeks off from my client calls. And then I actually did start them at 6 weeks postpartum, which I don't regret, because I loved having something outside of diapers and naps and boobs and stuff. But it was a lot. So I just kept my client calls until kiddo was about 9 months. And then I've started really getting a little bit more in the business building side of it, right? So creating content, writing blogs again, doing podcasts, doing guest posts, just because I have the mental space. Like I had the physical time, but not, like my brain was not working like that way. I had no creativity. I had no... Yeah, my head wasn't there. So so that's what the ramping up looks like, is I am taking on one new client as well, which is a lot of fun, because I love that stage of digging in, figuring out their culture, figuring out how the people side relates to their business goals, right? Because it's one thing to say, I want to become $1 million business within 2 years. Now, what does that mean? Do I need a team? Do I not need a team? Do I need contractors, employees? How do I motivate people? Because I've never had to do that before. So that's sort of that's the juicy stuff that I love. So that's where I'm at now. I'm still doing the client calls and the client project work. And now I'm also I have the time and space to do the more creative, sort of putting my shingle out there type stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Hearing you say that you didn't have creativity at that time.
Just none.
It's so true. Like you're not getting sleep.
No.
You know, like I feel like your higher brain is completely shut off, and it's like primitive animal brain only during that whole time.
Yeah, like survival mode. Like, and that's why my client calls I could still do, because that was real-time coaching consulting. So that was like in that half hour, 60 minutes, I could be there with my client. We could talk through the options, come up with a recommendation. And then that was like me tapped for that week. I was like, okay, I'm back to like survival mode, thinking of how to cook something with the kiddo on my hip, and it was hard. And I know your audience is a lot of mom entrepreneurs, isn't it? Yeah. So I really beat myself up about that. It's that thing of like, why can't I do, like I see other moms, they wrote a book on their maternity leave, and I can't even get my shit together to write a blog post, like I just, and I have gotten over that. But it took some work. Like it was that thing of, you make up stories about what other people have going on, and how easy, in air quotes, it is for other people. And so I've worked to get over that a little bit.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday about the expectations around motherhood, and it's just really crazy. I think this idea that like motherhood should be everything for you. It should be your total fulfillment and this rewarding, incredible experience. And I think maybe like when your kids are like 30, it is.
Yeah.
But when they're babies and like they don't even smile yet, and they're waking up all night long, like it's so draining. And like there's magical moments in like the daily slog of it.
Yeah. And I think I don't know. I think that's something I'm lucky. Like I do have some other mums who have deep passions that they've pursued as well. Because I made up this thing of to be a really good mom, it has to be like 90% of the time and attention on the kiddo. And you only get this other little part to fit in every other aspect of your personality, your psyche,
Yep.
your interests. And like, again, some of the other moms out there, I hope you're laughing because like, of course it's ridiculous. Of course it is.
Mm-hmm.
For me, for some other women, that's exactly their experience, which is like awesome, right? Like, but it's this making up what it should be, which is so dangerous. Because for some
Yeah.
women, having 90% of time and attention on the kiddo is exactly what feels right. And like, and then those are the women who are feeling like, oh, I'm supposed to, whatever it is, I'm supposed to want to go back to work, or and we make up all this stuff, and yeah, it's not good.
It's
It's
not
not
good.
good.
I'm glad to be having these conversations and showing the full spectrum of it, though.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so tell me, what kind of challenges have you faced while building your business and how have you
Mm.
overcome them? And this can be pre or post baby.
Mm-hmm. So there's probably two challenges. One is kind of more mindset type stuff, and one is just like pragmatic, practical stuff. So the pragmatic, practical one is like a very short story. One of my favorite clients, I love working with him. He's got this great tech company. One day, he said to me, this was when I was pregnant, actually. I hadn't had Ray yet. He said to me, Jess, I was like, yeah. He said, you're so good at what you do. I was like, oh, thank you. And he said, but you're a terrible businesswoman. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, do you realize you haven't invoiced me in months? I was like, oh. So yeah, so it was the light bulb moment again of realizing I am good at what I do. And I'm also really terrible at building it. Like I don't have business acumen. I'm figuring it out. So
Yes.
that's the practical side, is like when people say to me, oh, what's your sales funnel? I'm like, my who what? My like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I tell people I want clients and then sometimes I get them. Like I'm still such a newbie when it comes to figuring out how to run a business. Like that's not my background, but it's getting there, and I'm getting better. But yeah, it's the practicalities of running a business that I never thought of. I just was like, well, I'm really good at coaching and consulting for leaders, so I'll go and do that. But if no one knows I'm doing that, and I don't know how to market it, and I don't invoice, that's a hobby, not a business. So
Yeah.
figuring all that out has been hard for me. But like, interesting, rewarding, but hard.
Yeah.
And the other side, the kind of not softer side, but like mindset side, is just it's getting past that voice of, well, it's sort of the who do you think you are? It's the like, yeah, but why would people listen to you? There's like a million leadership consultants out there. Like, why would they pick you? It's that gremlin-y crap, right? That we all have
Yeah.
a version of it. And
Mm-hmm.
just, like the first few times that I published my blog posts on my LinkedIn profile, because that was all my corporate network on there,
Mm-hmm.
when I saw someone liked it, like my stomach dropped and I started sweating. Because it's not a corporate tone of voice that I use, because it's not me. And I was like, oh, it's someone I worked with before, and like they think I'm professional, and then I used the word shit in that blog post, and like, oh, and I'm sweating, and yeah, it took for me just doing it. Like it's cliche, but being scared shitless and doing it anyways was the only way for me to just push past that of like, what will they think? And, and I just have to keep doing it. And every time I've been on a podcast or done a guest post, I do the same thing. I got like sweaty hands and I feel like I'm going to be sick, but I'm like, I'm going to show up. I got to show up. So that's the two for me that have been the struggles. I mean, and there's still struggles. I haven't got it figured out, but I'm working on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. You're totally speaking my language with both of those. Like, those are the things that I do with clients. And what I've noticed is that we're all really good at what we do, coaches or
Mm-hmm.
like what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, like everybody's really good at their one thing. and they have no idea how to build a successful business.
Exactly.
And some of
Yeah.
the stuff that I thought was like, everybody knows how to make sure your business model is going to make money. And
Mm,
then, like, as I got into business coaching, thinking I was going to focus on something else, then I realized, oh my gosh, business basics are something that I need to focus on with
yeah.
everybody.
And
So,
I want to ask your opinion on something.
sure.
Because you work with probably a lot of women, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mostly women.
Yeah. So and I work with a mix. So I'm curious. I see this more in women, but I don't know if it's a cultural thing for us or if maybe it's just, that's who I happen to work with, so I see it. But there's this thing I see with women, the women I work with and the women I know, where when it's natural for us or easy for us or just is kind of sits in our strengths, we almost write it off, right? Like
Yes.
we do this
Hmm.
thing of, well, yeah, but I mean, everyone knows about that. And it's like,
Yeah,
but but do they, or are we
they
making that up because we know
don't.
about it? Like I do that a
Yeah.
lot. I've gotten much better at that over the last sort of 3-4 years. But it used to be to the point where actually I think I came off sometimes as, I don't know. You can't control perceptions of you, but I think I came off possibly dismissive because I'd say things to leaders like, "Well, just do a stop, start, continue." Like, I don't. Why are we? They're like, "Yeah, I don't know what that is." And I wasn't meaning to be dismissive. It's that confidence thing of assuming, yeah, people know what I know or get it or whatever. And yeah, so you've seen that too, then?
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
I actually see it with a lot of women I talk to who want to start a business, and they're like, I have
Mm,
no idea what business to start. And I think the answer is always if you can tap into what are those things that you know really well that you think
right.
everybody knows, but really nobody knows,
Yeah. Yeah.
or only some people know. And typically, you know what those are because that's what people ask you about.
Mm, mm,
So, yep, for me, it was definitely all the things that I do and a lot of the mindset stuff,
mm,
and I think that is something that everybody struggles with, but especially women. Just
mm,
that, like, who am I to do this? I don't have the right
mm,
qualifications or I don't have enough experience. Even if they have like an advanced degree or something, they
mm,
still have that thought.
mm.
I know a study came out that women will apply for a job only if they meet like 100% of the requirements. And
Yeah.
for men, it's like
Yeah.
60% or
Yeah.
something. They're just
Totally.
like, close enough. I can
Yeah.
do
Like
some of this
I
stuff.
could I could fudge that. It's fine. I'm great.
Yeah. And I think we really hold ourselves back in that way.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we're trained to, it's a societal thing.
Yeah.
It's not
I think
like,
so.
yeah, it's not like we're just like innately low self-esteem. I think it's a deep rooted cultural thing for sure.
I think you're right. Like, I mean, I won't. I think we've talked it to death, but a good example, and I know she won't mind sharing this, me sharing this with you. A good friend of mine, she's writing a book right now about sort of a memoir about her experiences, and she a couple years ago, while she was doing the research for this book, she was living in England. She ended up being on BBC, Good Morning. She was on Australia Today. She was in like 10 newspapers, features, all this publicity for this journey she was doing. And she actually said to me the other day, "Yeah, but I mean, that was just a fluke." I was like, "Girl, if you were a man, you'd be like, look how amazing I am. I should probably be CEO of a company by now." I was like, you like, well, it's not a fluke. Like, people pay
Yeah.
big money to get the publicity you got just by virtue of it was an interesting story. So yeah, I'm with you. We gotta, I think awareness is a big thing. I don't know if you would agree, but
Hmm.
yes, we still have to do the work, but noticing when we have those moments of just dismissing our own skills, I think that's huge. I think
Yeah,
I think that is definitely a big part of the battle.
absolutely. I completely agree with that. All
Mm.
right. So I would really love to use your expertise to give a few tips to anybody who's watching this.
Cool.
So, how do you know that it's time to bring on somebody else? Like if you're a solopreneur, when is it
Hmm.
time to hire somebody? And what's the most
Hmm.
important role to hire first?
Hmm. So I would say there's two things. So what I'd recommend, if there's anyone who's kind of toying with the idea of, is it time for me to build a team? I'd recommend, even though it's really boring and tedious, but just bear with me. Track your time for at least a week, ideally longer than that, but at least a week, and start noticing two things. Notice one, what percentage of your time are you spending on things you hate to do? And two, what percentage of your time are you just spending on things that are outside of your zone of genius, let's call it, right? So you might enjoy making images on Canva for Pinterest or Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. But if you're spending 30% of your time doing that, and the actual, your expertise or your actual business is you teaching or coaching or making a product, 30% of your time should not be spent on something that is not those things. Likewise, if you're only spending, say, 10% of your week on something you hate, 10% of your time on something you hate is still a lot of time. So look at those two columns and see what's in there. And start to actually break it down. So the things you hate, what are those things? Okay, is it bookkeeping? But what is it about bookkeeping you hate? Like, what's really draining you? And start to really get clear on that. And again, the other side of start to notice that percentage of time you're spending on things that are outside of your zone of genius. Can it be clumped together, basically? Okay, so 10% of your time was designing images in Canva, 10% was formatting your blog, and 10% was just responding, sort of generic responses to emails you're getting in. 30% of your day, that's probably a VA who could very easily and happily do those things and free you up to do what your business is. So start to look at where there's some natural, even the bookkeeping, like if the thing you hate about bookkeeping is literally just recording your expenses, again, that very easily could fit into that VA chunk of time. So start to look at where could you chunk that stuff together to be an actual person. That's what I would say to look at. And the other thing to keep in mind practically is just finances. I mean, if your income is not, and I know people don't like this because it's like you got to invest money to make money, and I get that, but remember that if you are hiring, especially an employee, if it's a contractor and you're just sending a bit of work their way, there's less, impact here. But if you're hiring an employee and then 2 months down the line realize you have no cash to pay them with, we all make mistakes. I'm not suggesting to try to be perfect, but just be aware of your cash flow and how that's going to impact that person. And if you've got the space in your cash flow to do it, go for it. Go for it. Make it happen. If you're struggling as it is, maybe a better spot to start with is a contractor. So someone you can, contract, say 5 hours a month, and they're not relying on you to pay their mortgage, kind of thing. Does that kind of answer the question? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really great. And I know that I've talked to a few clients about this who know that it's time and have no idea where to start. Do you have any advice on actually finding good candidates? Maybe for like a contract role. I think most of my audience is looking for that.
Yeah. And so there's two things. One is just generic advice and the other is a little more practical. So one is I tell the bosses I work with, especially when you have a small company and it's very heart-centered, so it's, it means a lot to you, be very careful about hiring for past experience. And I know that sounds silly because it's a small organization. You don't necessarily have time and money to train and upskill people, but just because they have done it before doesn't mean they're going to do it the way you want them to do it. B, what I find works best, especially in smaller organizations, is the chemistry. Like it really is this someone who I can have honest conversations with? Do we just naturally seem to work really well together? So yes, of course, if there's think of the bare minimum they have to have. If you need someone who's going to be a web designer, they should probably have web design past. But also think very carefully about personality. So a practical way to look for personality is you can You can actually do sort of a test day. You will need to pay them to be fair, I would say, although some people don't. Actually have them work for you for half day and spend half a day with them, like on Skype or on FaceTime. Go through some of the challenges. Have them do a piece of work for you. So here's a blog I need. Whatever it is, if you just need it formatted, or I need a social media calendar for the next month, have them do a piece of work for you, pay them for it, because
Yes.
that's just good karma.
Yep.
And see what it was like. Was it easy? Was it like pulling teeth? Do you feel like there was a good energy? So that's an idea. As for where to find people, look, you can post on job sites. Of course you can. If I were you, try your networks first. Referrals are always going to work way better, way better. There's a reason big corporates pay, anywhere to $2,000 for an employee referral.
Yeah.
It just works better because the person already knows you. They know the way you work, even if it's just a friend. Like, doesn't even necessarily have to be a colleague. So I'd start there. Try to get it through networking referrals first. Be open to someone not having the exact background you want if they have good energy and you jive well together. And think a little bit creative about those networks too. It doesn't have to be a best friend. It can be LinkedIn groups you're in. It can be a yoga group you're in. Like, I know people who, a great example is someone joined an organization because their coach in their roller derby team recommended them for a role. And that was
Wow.
and it's like worked perfectly, right? It like
Yeah.
fit into the culture. It was great. So think a little creatively when you think network. It doesn't have to be a completely professional network. Think a little wider than that.
That's awesome. Okay, I have one more question about this.
Sure.
And it's something you mentioned before, kind of that transition from being your business's CEO and only employee
Yeah.
to being a manager.
Yeah.
What tips do you have for making that mental shift and making that transition?
That's a big question. That
Yeah.
tends to be
Yeah, I just
tends to
want
be
a
what
couple easy tips.
easy ones. Okay. 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 So first I'd say, because this is a big thing, the first tip I have is go easy on yourself because you're going to screw it up. Like, I say this with love and with all, faith that you're great at what you do. You will screw this up. It is a brand new skill set. Like, you don't get to beat yourself up because you're great at teaching and somehow you're not amazing at managing right from the beginning. Of course you're not. It's new. So give yourself a bit of a break. You're going to screw it up. So that's number one tip. Number two tip I'd say is, and I see this is where a lot of mistakes happen, is just unclear expectations. And I know that sounds oversimplistic, but it's not. Like, the amount of times conflict, rework, waste of time and energy on just, you were not clear with the individual about what you expected. Now, what you got to remember, the difference between a micromanager and a great boss, a micromanager explains exactly how. They give, like, here's the 20-step thing I want you to do. That's annoying. Don't do that. What I'm talking about is what great bosses do, which is, here's the end result, completely detailed, why I want you to do it. Don't forget why, because smart people always work better understanding context. That's what you want to give them. They get to go away and work on it, come back to you for questions, all that stuff. Don't do the 20 steps in between, because A, it's annoying, and B, you've just hired a smart person. Their 20-step process might actually be better than yours. So don't sort of tie them in to something that might not even be the best way to do it. So giving yourself a break, clear expectations. The one other thing I'd mention as well, the thing that we forget is this is still a relationship. And we pretend it's not because it's work and we're getting paid, but it is still a relationship. So get to know the individual, the human. And I even recommend something. I sent an example off to a boss I know today, actually. do a 1-page overview of yourself, and everyone on your team, even if it's a team of one, has to fill in. So like, here's how I act when I'm stressed. Here's the best way to give me tough feedback when I've screwed up. Here's what you can do to make me feel really valued and happy and like part of the team. Like, don't just wait to figure those things out. Actually be conscious and design them up front. So that's the few
great.
off the top of my mind that I'd look towards as a new boss.
Yeah. I think those are amazing. So thank you so much.
No
All
problem.
right. So if people want to hear more about you, get in touch, maybe hire you,
Yeah.
where can they find you?
Well, the best place, because I'm a bit of a grandma, like everyone tells me about social media, and I know I need to figure it out eventually. But anyways, the best place is actually on my website, lightupwork.com. You can find some blog stuff there, some free stuff there. Contact me through there. My email is jess@lightupwork.com. And I am on Facebook floating around, but yeah, I'm a bit of a grandma stuck in a 30-something-year-old body. So check out my website is probably the safest way to get me.
Okay, awesome. We might have to talk about social media for you at some point because
Yeah, I know.
that's
It's
what
on
I
my
do.
list. It's on my list. Remember that whole sales funnel? What? Marketing, huh? It's on my list.
Yeah, I definitely think we need to have a little chat.
Well, I look forward to
All
that.
right. Well, thank you so much for joining and sharing your time and information with us
No problem.
from the storage closet. I really appreciate you making this work and sharing your expertise with us.
Awesome. It was a lot of fun. So thanks, Samantha.
You're welcome.
Cool. Okay. Talk to you soon about social media too.
Yeah.